Well, with 6th gear approaching Cops, about 100 and 160 mile gears, down 2 gears. Call the whole thing Beckett's really, a left-hand part. Then it's a slight acceleration and a sort of turning in where the car understeer is very difficult. Again, you can't see the exit, and if you've got understeer, you have to get your foot in hard to try and counteract that and let the car slide out. We're around 172, something like that, and again, it's down to 3rd gear for that one. And it's a sort of corner that you think you can brake later and later all the time, and you end up sliding wide. Again, you know, to try and get a clean entry, because the next exit, the club, is one of the most important and vital bits of the circuit, and the hardest, because it's 2nd up to 3rd gear in the middle of the corner, and you really fight the car all the way on the exit to keep the power on, not to lift even though you've got a slight slide on or something, just to try and keep it neat and tidy and power on all the time. Yeah, we've changed up to 4th for bridge. Our car understeers a lot through bridge, so we tend to have a lift before bridge. On the exit, everybody slides the car, scrabbling for grip. Obviously, you know, we've got 650 horsepower. You're trying to put it down. I just tend to go straight off the exit, straight into the apex, and stay on the inside all the way round, up on the curb if necessary on the inside, just to weight the outside tyre a bit more, because it's a very understeery corner.
After that sprinkling of rain in free practice, Sunday morning was warm and sunny, meaning that qualifying times from the cool morning session were unlikely to be repeated. That in turn means that this race is unlikely to go the full 500 kilometres. That, as you heard, would be 98 laps of Silverstone, and at around 2 minutes a lap, which was roughly the pace of the slower afternoon qualifying session. The 3-hour limit will be reached by the time the cars get to round about lap 90. So, figure on 2 fuel stops for everyone, maybe a splash for 1 or 2 others, and of course the usual juggling act for the team managers, who will be looking at an equation with race pace, fuel consumption, brake and tyre wear, and race position, all figuring on the balance sheet. That's the theory at least, but the practical application is that unless the Lister has problems, everyone else will be racing for 2nd place at best, with the 2nd of the black Batmobiles hoping to spoil the Vipers' party and make it a 1-2 finish for the home team. And it's going to be the same again in GT2, based on qualifying at least, with the Labra car enjoying a big comfort margin over 2nd place and unlikely to be deposed from another class win except by mishap or misdemeanour. And there may well be some of that going on here. Silverstone may not be the scary man's circuit that it used to be. Reprofiling of the corners and the building of the infield complex has diffused a lot of the high-speed challenge, but it's still very fast and very difficult. Most of the drivers like it because it does have a good combination of slow and fast corners. It's one of those places where a driver can make a difference. Although, as we've heard, so many people say there's not a great deal that you can do when the pole sitter has got a 2nd in hand over the next quickest car and almost 2 seconds over his teammate. At least it promises to be a dry race, which makes a pleasant change and means the spectators will be able to sit back and enjoy the show. A 1 o'clock start, 98 laps or 3 hours, whichever comes up first, and we expect it to be 3 hours, and it's time to start engines for the warm-up lap. 29 cars on the grid for this one. Just a couple missing, as we know, including the desperately unlucky Marcos team, the all-new but now decidedly second-hand Lamborghini Diablo, and one or two cars which were double-heading in last night's ELMS race and can't make it to the grid today. Warm-up times from this morning were interesting because the Lister ran within a tenth of its grid time, but almost everyone else was noticeably slower in race trim and on full tanks than they had been in qualifying mode. That could well mean that the big black cars have an even bigger margin over everyone else than the grid times actually show us. Here's the way they line up though, with Lister on pole. That's a first for Jamie Campbell-Walter, who set the time, and the number 12 Viper alongside. The second Lister lines up right behind his teammates, hoping for a good start, but so too will be Mike Hazeman's in the red Carsport Holland Viper. Best place of the Chamberlain Vipers will be started by Swiss driver Tony Seiler, who's helmed in by Paul Belmondo to his right, Jean-Pierre Jarier in the number 29 car right behind, and his own teammate Stephen Watson behind that. The South African driver at last getting his hands on a car in the race. Misfortunes and rain this year have so far prevented that happening, but today he's actually racing for the first time this year. On board in the number 51 NGT Pennzoil Porsche with Michel Neugarten at the wheels, starting his first stint and starting the race as they come round Woodcote on the warm-up lap, the final corner. Nice, well-behaved grid. Look at this, all very tidy. The pace car pulls off. We're ready for a go. If race director Roland Brunzerider is happy with the positioning and behaviour of everybody on this grid, then the green flag will be shown from the sidelines, and round 4 of the FIA GT Championship is go at Silverstone. Hammer down and away they go past the pits, thundering towards Cops Corner with the Lister in the lead and everybody else bustling along behind. But it's Julian Bailey who makes the right turn first. You can't see the apex, it's an act of faith. Through he goes, running downhill now. Last section of the circuit, everybody jostling for position, still on cool tyres, not quite up to it yet, so best behaviour through here please, or there will be tears before bedtime. That is the number 11 Viper, which Paul Belmondo started today, but it's his teammate Boris de Richburg in second place, got the jump on Mike Hazeman's as the lights went green, so it is Julian Bailey, then Boris de Richburg, then Mike Hazeman, then it is Philippe Favre in the second Lister, and you just saw Jean-Pierre Jarier in that number 29 Viper have another stab at Paul Belmondo, getting nowhere. Number 1 Viper behind that, Stephen Watson. That's the way it stacks up, and then his teammate Tony Seiler behind that. Then the last of the Belmondo cars, Jean-Claude Lanier started his last race as well. The team always knew that that car wouldn't make it through the season. Other commitments meant the two drivers will have to cease their commitment here. And it's still Julian Bailey easing away from the number 12 car of Boris de Richburg. Mike Hazeman having a go at second place. Hazeman in the 25 car. They've been working so hard on developing that car, giving it absolutely everything this season. Then they discovered that they were actually overweight, not underweight, and they could afford to shed some. So they've thrown off everything, including the onboard camera. The team went out on Friday and spent an unspeakable amount of money on an aviation battery for the car to lose a couple more grams. They've brought it back down as close as they can to its minimum permitted weight. Through the heat haze they come, running down towards Beckett again. Then it's the Hangar Straight, of course, the fastest part of the circuit. Over 170 miles an hour before they reach Stowe and reach for the brakes. Lots of overtaking in this race is going to happen at Stowe. It's probably the best place if you're close enough to dive out of the slipstream. Watch Mike Hazeman now. He's thinking about passing Boris de Richburg, but it didn't happen. Philippe Favre, Paul Belmondo, Jarrier. Then Stephen Watson has dropped back a little bit, and Tony Seiler coming under attack. So is Langnier, because Jürgen von Gartzen in the number 5 Porsche is on the move. Jürgen von Gartzen has grabbed a place. Well, the Porsches really have struggled here at Silverstone. Wide, flat and fast for the most part. What they make up in the complex, they lose almost straight away on the pit straight and then on the run down the back again. So it's not a good day for the Porsches, and they will be really struggling to make their mark on the leaderboard. Certainly struggling to get their name on the points leaderboard at the end of the race. Mike Hazeman, the winner last time out, remember, at Monza. Classic battle that was in both classes, and defused really only when the Lister gear lever, beg your pardon, snapped off, left it stuck in second gear. On board with Michel Neugarten, that is Mancini, I think, in the Mac Porsche. Fabio Mancini it is indeed, number 67 ahead of us. Here's the man who's ahead of everybody else, though. This is Julian Bailey, and that is the gap back to second place already. Looking like 3 or 4 seconds, and you can see, look, Boris de Richburg really working the steering wheel in the Viper. The car slides out of the apex, and you really got to juggle it with steering wheel and right foot. Again here, very bumpy, very slippery. The car's always wanting to move offline, and it's lots and lots of work. Look at his hands going up there. It's not easy hustling those big cars through here. And look at the class of lead that Julian Bailey has already established. There's the leaderboard, 3.8 seconds the gap, and another second back to the number 25 car, who now has Philippe Favre beginning to knock on the back door a bit. On board the Ferrari number 71, Philippe Alliot, making his return to racing here at Silverstone. And as you can see, already being left behind, there's the NGT leader. That is the number 77 Red Bull car. And they're starting to queue up behind Wolfgang Kaufmann. The black and white Porsche in the lead there was Wolfgang Kaufmann, and it just looked as though he's starting to become a bit of a roadblock. They suffered terribly in qualifying for the Freisinger team. First they thought they had a chassis problem, but it was actually a broken damper, and then they developed a misfire which simply will not go away, and has not gone away as of this morning's warm-up. And it does look as though it's running just a little bit slow. The effect was basically like a rev limiter on the main straights, and it does seem as if he's getting in the way a bit here, and this lot are queuing up to take his scalp as soon as they see a straight bit of road. That's going to happen. .45 Horst Felbermeyer Jr. in the third of the Chamberlain cars made the switch from Porsche to Viper this weekend. And fish out of water or what? He said everything's different. The mirrors are different, the seats different, the switches, absolutely everything. It's a foreign environment, but he's learning it as fast as he can and enjoying it. Says it's going better than the Porsche, and I think we can expect them to stay with that. There is the number 52 Labra car of Christophe Bouchou, currently running in second place in NGT, but not by much, as you can see. It was quite a way behind, but it isn't anymore. He is definitely tapping on the back door. And there goes Felbermeyer. Now that is definitely a problem for the Freisinger car. One of the quicker Porsches, and Wolfgang Kaufmann obviously struggling on speed, didn't have an answer to the Viper, and in fact doesn't look like he's got an answer to the NGT cars, which will be arriving very shortly and are almost certainly going to do the same thing. So Freisinger in trouble right from the beginning. And that was the number 5 car of Jürgen von Gartzen, who has passed both of these cars, so he's definitely on the move, and that's the pace of the Porsche, or it should be. So you can see by comparison that Wolfgang Kaufmann is struggling a bit. And this gap opening up. This is the number 10 Belmondo car, followed by the number 2 Chamberlain car of Tony Seiler. So the Chamberlain cars, all three of them, spread out nicely among the field. As in comes the Mack Porsche, Mancini gets a 10-second stop-go penalty for being just a little over-ambitious at the start and going ahead of the green flag. And it costs more than 10 seconds, of course. The total there, closer to a minute by the time you've slowed down and speeded up and rejoined the race. The battle for the lead in the NGT class, though, and it's Luca Riccitelli in the number 77 Red Bull car and Christophe Bouchou breathing down his neck in the Chirot Porsche, the number 52 car. Much quicker in qualifying. Bouchou loves it here, he says, and is definitely in a hurry. Here comes the move on the run down the hill, pretty much as predicted, just nips through on the inside. And starts to pull away at once. Well, that's the class of performance we saw from this car in qualifying, and now you're starting to see it again in the race. Now he's got a clear road in front of him. There is a pit stop for the number 56 car. Tim Sugden comes into the pit. They're just changing the rear tyre. They've struggled with those new Pirellis all weekend, and it does seem as if they are struggling still in the race, and that's not a good omen for the team. And here's the battle for third place as Philippe Favre starts to get very anxious behind Mike Hazeman. He wants to go past, he really wants to take that place, and the Lister should be capable of it. Well, coming out of the heat haze, you can see that it is warm here again at Silverstone. That slowed them up yesterday. They were much quicker in the morning than in the afternoon when there was some heat in the tarmac. So the Lister's advantage is somewhat increased by that, or so it seems. They seem to run on their qualifying pace, whatever the temperature, where the Vipers were noticeably slowed down. And that is Wolfgang Kaufmann's car. There it is, being passed by these two, and he is really slowing, and it does look as if he will be giving up. There he is in the pits, Wolfgang Kaufmann all over. Well, at least he's cheerful about it, but what a miserable weekend that must have been for the team. Not so for Lister, though, because Julian Bailey continues to lead it, and by a growing margin. It's all looking very nice indeed for Lister. The only thing that has spoiled their perfect record so far was the gear lever, which came off in Julian Bailey's hand in Italy. And they still managed to get on the podium despite that. So the race performance so far looking as strong as the qualifying performance. 100% record of success on the paperwork front. Every session they have taken part in, they have topped. And here is second place. This is the number 12 Belmondo car, the De Richborg and Voss pairing. Everyone's been expecting them to put those two together. The quickest two drivers in the team were in separate cars. They're now in one team as the Belmondo team makes its bid for championship glory. And they're really hoping for a good result from this car this weekend, and it's looking very well placed indeed, having just passed the number 50 NGT Porsche. Here is the NGT leader, Christophe Bouchou, coming up behind Tim Sugden, who's obviously just come out from his pit stop with fresh rubber on the rear, but still not looking very happy about life at all. And it would appear that Bouchou will be past him as soon as the track opens up. Here he comes. And there is third place, and right behind is fourth place. moving through the field as you saw, but moving through together, the traffic neither helping nor hindering either of those drivers, so no advantage, and there's traffic all the way around here, so Mike Hazeman's got a lot to think about. He wants to keep that Viper on the pace, on the line, and here comes oh no, too late. Well, he had a little think about it, but it just wasn't quick enough, wasn't soon enough, didn't get on the gas out in the previous exit well enough. It was the traffic which stopped him making the pass, so at last it's helped Mike Hazeman. But the lights come on now and he's thinking about it again. This is all going to end in tears if we are not very careful. But Mike Hazeman doing a fine job of keeping the Lister at bay. It is definitely handier and faster, more natural downforce as the pit stops begin. An early one for the Ferrari crew. Mancini just taking fuel on board, everything else is fine. This is the NGT leader though. Christophe Bouchou handing over to Patrice Gouslard, who is being strapped into the car. Now, well, the race distance is a theoretical 90 laps. The first stops were expected therefore at 1/3 distance, therefore around 30 laps. That was lap 25, so a little bit early for the NGT change. Off goes Patrice Gouslard. But who knows what kind of a strategy the Labra team have in mind. Oh dear, what kind of a strategy is this for Luca Capillari? He spun, no problem, and rejoins. Well, just a little bit enthusiastic with the throttle, and it's not that difficult in the Viper. Here comes third place into the pits, so that was Mike Hazeman. Oh, and in comes the number 15 Lister behind him, Philippe Fabre. They're at opposite ends of the pit lane. Watch the Lister dive in first and come to a rest first. Now, there is a 60 km/h speed limit in force in the pit lane, of course. So, although the Lister will start its pit stop sooner and leave its pit stop sooner, it will probably still arrive here behind number 25 unless either of them has a problem. That's how it will pan out. David Hart getting into the car as Mike Hazeman gets out. And that means that Boris de Richburg is in the clear in second place. It's Julian Bailey, Boris de Richburg, and then a nice big comfy gap, which they'll be pleased about. The pit stops, as always, will change everything, and in comes de Richburg for his stop, so it's all going to be very different. The Lister still in for its wheel change. That means the driver has changed, the fuel has gone on, and only then can the mechanics touch the car with the wheel guns. Gets away nice and cleanly, and there's the number 12 car in for its stop. The Car Sport Holland Viper has already left with David Hart behind the wheel now, and the pit stops juggle the order slightly and in the process promote Jürgen von Gartzen. A big leapfrog for him for a couple of laps, but remember, he hasn't. Neither has Jean-Pierre Jarier in front of him in the number 29 Viper. So it's all going to be a little bit confusing on the electronic timing for a while, and also fairly irrelevant, because once the full round of pit stops has taken place, it'll all settle down again. There may be advantages. Some people are a bit slicker in the pits than others. They may take on different amounts of fuel, but in the end, it will be the little problems with wheel nuts and things that make the biggest difference. Barring that, the pit stops, not like a Formula 1 stop. They can't refuel and do everything else at the same time, so it all takes a little bit longer, round about a lap if you'd like to average it out, which means that it's not the hustle of an F1 pit stop, and it doesn't change that much that often. And there is David Hart with Vincent Voss behind him. They came out in the approved order after the pit stops, but Vincent Voss now hustling past Hart as they go through the right-hander. So Voss just a little bit quicker. Now in what will be second place when everything settles down. Remember, we're still waiting to see the number 14 Lister in the pits. Julian Bailey handing over to Jamie Campbell-Walter, and that is Lafont. He's been in for his pit stop, and perhaps on cold tyres. He's just got a little bit excited, but there's something on the ground there. In comes Jürgen von Gartzen for his scheduled stop. So now we're seeing the electronic scoreboard settle down a bit and put everybody back where they came from. Franz Conrad with his back to us, waiting for his middle stint. And here's the race leader. This is the number 14 Lister after its pit stop with Jamie Campbell-Walter at the wheel, but we've just been told that a 10-second stop-go penalty has been awarded, if that's the right word for it, to the Lister for pit lane speeding. Not sure whether that was on the way in or the way out, but it's a 10-second penalty. And as we said before, it's not 10 seconds, because by the time you've slowed down, been in, and then pulled away again, it's a lot more than that. Past the pit lane entry goes Jamie Campbell-Walter. Well, the penalty is notified to the team in writing, and the car has 3 laps only after that in which to come in. So doubt this, they're on the radio right now talking to Jamie Campbell-Walter, telling him it is time to come in. And that is, that's a shame for Tim Sugden. The car well and truly beached there in the gravel, and they're obviously having problems with tyres, and it's fairly terminal looking problem as well. It doesn't look as if they're going to cure it this weekend, struggling on and making the best fist of it, but that looks well and truly stuck. He's going to need help getting out of that gravel trap. And the marshals are here. He didn't need any help getting into it though, just the back end getting away from him, and it landed well and truly, and it's going to stay there unless somebody gives him a push. Here's Jamie Campbell-Walter though in the number 14 Lister, and the question is, will he be coming in? He's just approaching the pit lane entrance now, coming into the complex, so any moment now he's going to have a decision to make. There's no doubt that they accept the penalty, they're not arguing about it, there's no protest, there's no question that Lister disagree, and it's only a question of whether he comes in this lap or the next one. After that he's in lots of trouble, so either this time or next time. And they're saying, do you want a rope on this? Yes please. In comes Jamie Campbell-Walter into the pit lane and crosses the white line that marks the start of the restricted area, and following the Proton Porsche in, coming to the sin bin, which is right at the pit lane entrance, right next to the Lister pits. Lawrence Pierce there to make sure that everything is done by the book, and his driver gets any help he needs if he needs it. They are allowed to help if he has any problems, but only after the 10 seconds has elapsed. No problem, and away he goes.
Apparently it was me speeding in the pit lane on the way in. What happened was I ran out of fuel on the last corner, and I had a bit of a panic, because obviously had I missed the pit lane entry, we probably wouldn't have made it.
Bit of an understatement from Julian Bailey. You're looking at the new race leader at the moment, number 12, that's Vincent Voss. Grabbed second place from Mike Hazeman after the pit stop. Now the Lister has been in, he's taken over the lead, and he had getting on for a lap in hand, but of course Jamie Campbell-Walter has come out and has nailed it since then. And now, as you can see, closing in the background, just under 3 seconds is the difference now, and this is going to be important for Lister because they're chasing their home win, and of course it's important for the Belmondo team because they're chasing the championship. They've put Voss and de Richburg together in the quest for maximum points, and that would do very nicely here at Silverstone on a circuit where the Vipers quite clearly are down on performance compared to the Lister. If they can take maximum points away from here, it will be something very useful indeed. Stuck in the traffic with Jamie Campbell-Walter chasing. Well, this is the battle for the lead, and battle it is now that Jamie Campbell-Walter has closed right up with Vincent Voss in the number 12 Viper. Had a look and thought about it very carefully going through Cops, but it wasn't to be. But now watch him when they get to Stowe. All he's got to do is stick close to the back end of the yellow Viper all the way through this complex of corners at Beckett's, and then on the hanger straight be tucked right up underneath that rear spoiler and pop out of the slipstream at the bottom. And as they brake for the right-hander, you watch him. This is it. Vincent Voss is doing everything in his power, but the basic truth is that the Viper simply isn't powerful enough now compared to the Lister. And there it was, nice and easy does it. Julian Bailey and Lawrence Pierce watching as their man retakes the lead. So Lister back on course for a home win, and the Belmondo hopes dashed yet again. Still got a long way to go though, it isn't over yet. Vincent Voss, glued to the back end, is doing all he can. Into the pits comes the number 50 Pennzoil car, third in NGT, and it's a driver change. Fuel, driver change, and back out on track. Struggling a bit here this weekend, so right on the pace at Monza and then just a little bit off it here at Silverstone. Amazing what a difference a race can make. There's number 11, the second of the Belmondo cars. That's Gosselin now taken over from Paul Belmondo, running in fourth place, but quite a long way down. And so unless something goes horribly wrong in front, fourth is probably the best that they can hope for. Paul Belmondo's made the decision to switch the team around, and he knew that instead of having two cars within a whisker of the pace, he was going to have one that was slap on it and another one that was going to struggle. The 11 car, his car, is the one that's struggling. It's the number 12 car which is up there and running ahead of this one. This is David Hart in the number 25 Viper, and the winner of the previous race, not quite as slick here at Silverstone as it was at Monza. And there are the two Pennzoil cars. That's Nigel Smith and Magnus Wallander, third and fourth in NGT, and running together on track at the moment. Although it does look as if we are about to see a pass it steady, boys. They're in the same team. There's confirmation. Luca Riccitelli, the Red Bull car, is the man out in front. And then, of course, it's the Labre car, Patrice Gousselard at the moment. And these two, who have just swapped places. Well, no team orders there, quite clearly. And running surprisingly well, the NGT Porsches, not massively different to the GT2 cars. They are developing. The ALMS Porsches have got some aerodynamic tweaks and bits and pieces that haven't yet permeated to the FIA cars, but will do any time now, especially now they've all had a jolly good look at them since the series was here this time. So I expect these cars to improve quite considerably over the coming 2 or 3 races. Closing up on the number 29 Viper. Had a terrible brake explosion, and that's had a problem. That's Vincent Voss going very slowly indeed. Well, they had a gearbox problem in qualifying, and now what is the problem this time? They changed the gearbox. It's completely new, but there's definitely a problem, and the challenge for the number 12 car is probably over. Whatever it is, even if it's just running out of fuel, and it's a bit early for that sort of thing, then it's losing an awful lot of time, and it's going to be very difficult to make it up. But it's coming into the pit lane entrance now, and there is tragedy for Belmondo, and there is Paul Belmondo. This team works so hard this weekend and every weekend. Immaculate, professional, and really put their heart into it, and it's a shame to see it going wrong. The team weren't ready, they weren't expecting this. It is definitely a problem. No, he says, forget it. Vincent Voss knows when it's all over. So that's promoted Gosselin and Belmondo, but not, of course, the way they would have liked. The number 12 car retires, drops out of second place, putting Hazeman and Hart up into second, of course, and everybody else moving up accordingly down the field. Well, that's not the way they wanted to end this weekend. What a terrible shame for them. Things are looking up here, though. This is Guy Martinol catching Nicholas Springer in the number 15 Lister and passing it, grabbing a place there and making up in a very small way for the tragedy that's befallen Vincent Voss.
I feel a small vibration into the first corner, which is not a good sign because it happened yesterday already in the second qualifying. And then first I pulled 6 into Hunger Straight, the gearbox exploded.
That's the second gearbox explosion in as many days. There's obviously a problem there, and no problem here. Studio de Fourny goes past Francois Lafont and starts moving away briskly almost at once. Late breaks himself a bit there, a little puff of smoke from the back. He's working quite hard, but he's definitely in a hurry. You can see the scars of battle on the front of the #1 Viper. It's obviously been very busy out there on track. In comes the number 52 NGT Porsche of Patrice Gouslard. Well, they were the first to stop in the first round of pit stops, and this marks the start of the second round, and quite obviously first to stop again. They're leaving Christophe Bouchou out for quite a long time at the end. He likes it. Oh, here comes number 25. This is David Hart from second place now, and obviously about to hand over to Mike Hazeman, but there seems little prospect of them doing anything to improve on second place. Long pit lane here at Silverstone, as you can see. 60 kilometres an hour through here, although Julian Bailey was clocked at slightly more than that right at the beginning at the pit lane entrance. So in comes second place, Mike Hazeman preparing to take over for the last hour. No driver can go more than 55% of the race distance. This is a pit stop. In comes the race leader. On the limiter now, Jamie Campbell. Walter crosses the white line, and he knows that all the radar guns in the area are pointing right at him, but he hasn't got very far to go. Out comes Mike Hazeman, who is now temporarily the race leader, but that won't last. It will be reinstated as number 14 as soon as this pit stop is over, providing there are no problems. Hearts in your mouth, gentlemen, please. Everybody in black will have their fingers crossed at this point, but it's all very calm and controlled, even with two cars in at the same time, which is not a situation Lister particularly enjoy, or anybody else for that matter. But no problem at all. Out goes Julian Bailey, and that should see the number 14 car back in the lead, and that should see the normal service resumed as Mike Hazeman catches up with Philippe Alliot in the 71 Ferrari. These two cars still plugging on. Qualified at the tail end of the grid, the 360 Modeners haven't distinguished themselves by an enormous amount of speed. And you're looking at Lamberti in the number 70 car, but how distinguished do they look? Prettiest cars on the track by a long chalk to some, and in a period of development which the team is quite content to go very slowly on. They've taken what is basically a road car. The new regulations have allowed them to homologate this car. The manufacturer doesn't have to do it, so they've homologated the car. They're working on the development, and really what you're looking at is a road car with the carpets taken out. That's oversimplifying it, as always. This is Philippe Alliot now in 71, but they have produced a car which has seen the checkered flag every time it has turned out, and that is quite an achievement. They're happier getting reliability and finishes first and then looking for performance. And remember, they're taking on a car like this, which is at the tail end of 30 years of racetrack development. So it's understandable. Oh, and look at Bouchou. He's at the tail end of his race, and he's in a big, big hurry to be the NGT leader before the checkered flag drops. Well, he is definitely on the move here. He's behind Luca Riccitelli in 77, the NGT leader. He is right behind him now. He's almost touching him now. And Christophe Bouchou very anxious to be on the way. He's got Horst Felbermeyer in the Viper alongside him. It's all getting very confusing. Three abreast, and oh dear, tears before bedtime. Bouchou not waiting for those wide open spaces. He wants it now. And hops the curb. Through he comes. This is driving from Christophe Bouchou. Well, he is in a big, big hurry. Felbermeyer as well. The Lister, the race. Oh, and they touch. Riccitelli and Bouchou touch. Bouchou gets the best of it. Belvermeyer's gone through. The race leaders in the background pushing on as well. As into the pits for a splash and dash comes Jean-Pierre Jarier in the 29 car. It's almost all over. This will be a very quick one indeed, because the 3 hours are coming up long before the 98 laps. Well, not long before, 6 laps or so. The stopwatches are out, the checkered flag is raised, and the Lister team has done it on home ground. This is the result they wanted a year ago when the drive shaft broke, and it seems almost certain that they will take it now. Fingers crossed, there are yards to go. Julian Bailey could almost coast home from here. Let's hope he doesn't have to. He wants to go over the finish line under power. He's on the final run. There is the checkered flag for Julian Bailey and the Lister team as they take a home win at round 4 at Silverstone. Its 3rd win of the season and its 4th consecutive podium finish ahead of Mike Hazeman and then Paul Belmondo, and a very happy Stephen Watson in 4th place, a race and a finish at last. That result means Julian Bailey and Jamie Campbell Walter go top of the table together now, with David Hart and Mike Hazeman right behind them, followed by assorted Belmondo boys and then a clutch of Porsche men, as Franz Conrad collects his first points of the year after a strong but largely unseen performance from himself and Jürgen von Gartzen. And there's the usual performance up here.
Welcome to GT on 4 from Donington for the 4th round of the Privilege Insurance British GT Championship.